What's up guys, Cherno is back at it again with another one of these reaction review technical details. Really it's just me giving my thoughts on what is directly in front of me, usually for the first time. Today we're going to be looking at Last of Us Part 2, specifically the state of play trailer type thing. Apparently this has a little bit of information about what's actually going on, which I'm interested in. I haven't watched any Last of Us videos at all, really, Last of Us Part 2 videos. I mean, I've seen some gameplay snippets here and there, but I haven't seen anything at all. Apparently this game looks amazing, especially for a PlayStation 4 generation game, so I for one am very keen to jump in and take a look at what it is they have cooked up for us. I'll leave the link in the description below, as always, and without further ado, let's dive in and take a look at what exactly they're doing to make this supposedly look so good. Oh, and I need to record my screen, which I foolishly did not do at all. That's the kind of stuff we want in a game.
I know you wish things were different. I wish things were different.
I really like his hand in this shot, actually. It's very well detailed. So is his face.
I wish things were different. Ellie! But they ain't.
Please stop!
I haven't watched much of it, but so far I have to say that the animation is the animation is really good. And one of the biggest things that I think people neglect sometimes is the actual animation. It's a huge difference. Sometimes you look at still frames and there's no animation going on and you think the game looks great, but then when you start playing it, due to the animation and just the interaction between things and how everything actually works when you start playing the game, it can be pretty disappointing. But what I'm enjoying, the thing that sticks out to me the most so far watching this is just the quality of the animation. It looks like a movie. That's really, really well done. And I would say that's one of the hardest things to do, for sure. I mean, you look at a lot of these still frames, and I think that an artist who knows what they're doing, even in an engine like Hazel, which isn't really it doesn't have all the graphics features in the world, you could probably still make something like this. But when you start actually putting it into motion, that's where the real engine code starts to shine through. Getting something like this up is not that difficult, but then getting it to actually feel good and be playable, I think that's probably 80% of the work, to be honest.
I'm leaving tomorrow.
Yeah, some of the lighting that I'm seeing could definitely be better. It doesn't feel like it's, it doesn't feel like it's on that next gen level. I mean, it's not next gen, but it doesn't feel like it's on that next gen level. But the quality of everything else that I'm seeing so far is really great. Like I was talking about this shot particularly. I just feel like the areas that aren't maybe in direct sunlight here, you can tell that there's no real light bouncing going on, and just the way that this foliage is soaking in the light, maybe it's not translucent enough. It just doesn't feel as real to me. The quality of the textures does feel quite high though. But it's at the point right now where I don't care that that's the case, because I actually feel immersed, whether it be the audio that I'm listening to, but also the quality of the animation. I already feel a little bit invested into these characters, and it's been a minute, and to be honest, I'm a little surprised by that. I think that they've done a great job with that.
If he's smart, we'd be leaving Jackson vulnerable.
So they just get to get away with this?
The voice acting's great as well. It fits in really well.
You can't stop this.
I want what you want, but not at any cost.
This is an artistic masterpiece so far.
I really hope you make it.
Oh, look at those 3D particles there. That looks great. The eyes look amazing.
We could have killed you. Maybe you should have.
I'm Neil Druckmann, Vice President of Naughty Dog and the Director of The Last of Us Part 2. We're just a few weeks away from launch on June 19th, when the game will finally be in your hand.
Those water splashes look really nice. Look at that. Usually interactive water in video games is like, let's just say sometimes I feel like maybe they shouldn't have made it like dynamic at all, but these water splashes look very well made. I actually really am interested in how they're doing that.
The wait has been long, and we're extremely grateful for your patience, especially now.
Could be like a, you know, just a very basic particle system, a textured particle system just jumping out, and obviously like an animated flipbook of the actual water splash itself.
Now, in the midst of these unprecedented...
A lot of them looked very similar, so I'm leaning towards that, but but they did a good job on making them. They probably filmed it in real life, actually. They probably just set up like a black background, most likely, and just splashed some water, you know, set up a camera, splash some water, and then maybe potentially cleaned that up a bit and put it onto like a texture and exported it as like an image sequence, and then you can feed that into the particle system, and then just, you know, have that move a little bit maybe, but also flip through the textures.
Unprecedented and challenging times. We hope you're all taking care of yourselves, and that you, your friends,
Love the snow.
and your loved ones are doing well. Because of these extraordinary circumstances, we can't be together in this final stretch and share the experience like we usually would. So today we're trying something different. Something we've never done before.
Look at the detail on those fingers. You can see all the dirt under the fingernails and around the fingernails. Like that is a very, very realistic looking model of a hand right there. Like the detail in this is not to be taken lightly. That's incredible.
Over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to give you an in-depth look into what awaits you in The Last of Us Part 2.
This is great.
Including new details about the gameplay experience and story. And to cap it all off, we'll be showing a never-before-seen, lengthy gameplay sequence. You'll definitely want to stick
Out of focus
around for
lights.
that.
Always good. Very impressed so far.
I don't know what happened.
These kind of wider shots where there's not, you know, the camera's not as close to the actual environment or to a person, that detail you can definitely see is a little bit lower, and I think that's one of the things possibly that in next gen is actually going to look better because of some of the new technology that they've got. I think it's going to be possible to make things further away look better as well. A lot of that is the kind of variable shading rates, and I'm not sure if that's necessarily next gen. I don't think that exists on current gen consoles, but I know that for one is going to be a huge difference. Also, just the quality of the assets that we saw in something like the Unreal Engine demo is going to make that a lot better, because, I mean, I'm not saying that technology is likely to be used in a lot of games, because I imagine, again, those assets are very heavyweight, and that was nothing more than a tech demo. But obviously, if you have something like Unreal Engine 5's technology with their kind of triangle decimation, working out what pixels need what triangles, then clearly that's going to bring a lot more detail, even if something is far away, because they're able to decimate or tessellate that down, essentially, which isn't really tessellation. But anyway, they can decimate that down into something that will actually make that area look better, because it's going to more or less take in the stuff that contributes the most influence to what it's going to look like, in terms of like triangles and textures and all of that data that they potentially have available there. So I think that's likely to improve with next gen stuff. But so I'm not surprised to see this like it is here compared to the close up stuff. But you can see that what they've done is they've really pushed those close up frames, and they're probably using as many resources to render those close-up frames with no background, essentially, maybe in a building, compared to these, I reckon, for sure.
Anchor to the fireflies and walk away. They were actually going to make a cure. They were actually going to make...
Something looks a little bit off to me about this hand. I think maybe it's the ambient occlusion. I think it's a little bit too harsh. Because you can see the outline, there's almost like a dark outline. It's a really small thing to be picking up on, obviously, but yeah, here you go. You can see that kind of, I don't know if it's a mix between a shadow, because there obviously is a light coming from above. Looks like it's a little bit to her right, but that kind of dark outline suggests maybe some AO that's a little too strong.
Cure. The only catch.
Those of you who are new to me and you've never seen me look at this, just know that I'm not criticizing this game. I'm not saying, oh, it looks bad. How dare they? I'm just explaining things that come to my head when I look at some of this stuff. And, you know, I'm already more than impressed enough by this game. Just know that.
The Last of Us Part 2 picks up Ellie and Joel's story
Really nice
several
subsurface
years after
scattering
the
there on
events of the
her,
first game.
on her hands there.
Ellie and Joel have settled in Jackson, Wyoming, amongst a thriving community of survivors.
That looks more like a painting, that
Wyoming,
thing. I doubt
amongst
it. Yeah, that is a
Thriving
painting.
community of survivors.
That background, but it looks great.
With the threats of the world kept outside the town's walls, Jackson
Nice
has been
hair.
able to find relative peace and even stability.
These are great
Ellie is now
shots.
19.
This whole thing is a cinematic masterpiece. The way the camera moves as well, like they've really thought out their camera shots and
lives
their
on her
framing.
own, and has been able to forge
Just the
lasting
general
relationships
composition is
within the
great.
community.
Scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate our kiss from last night?
However, this peace is short-lived. Jackson and Ellie suffer a violent and traumatizing event. Ellie sets off back into the treacherous outside world in search of retribution and justice. Her journey will take her to new parts
This looks,
of the country
yeah, a lot of the wide kind of outdoor shots are a little bit
previously
lacking in
unexplored in The Last
detail,
of
I
Us.
think. And you can tell with these leaves, like the way that the trees are moving and everything, they're obviously a lot lower detailed, we'll say.
The story spans multiple seasons and climates, from the snow-capped mountains of Jackson to the lush Pacific Northwest. Each introduces a wide range of exterior and interior environments for you to navigate and explore, rendered in meticulous detail and unprecedented scale with the latest iteration of the Naughty Dog engine.
That kind of volumetric
Our
fog is
goal
nice.
was to make these environments not only beautiful, but feel as grounded and authentic to the cities they're based on as possible. Much of the story unfolds in what remains of Seattle, a massive former quarantine zone. Its locales are incredibly diverse, spanning a dense city center with a skyline of towering high-rises to the beautiful suburbs and stormy waterfronts that surround it. The city exhibits drastic
Bluish frames with a Ferris wheel like that will always remind me of like the Call of Duty 4 kind of intro coming in there with like, what was it called? It was like, I don't know, something about a ghost town. Whatever.
shifts in architecture, elevation, and weather. And with Part 2, we've introduced new traversal mechanics that afford greater exploration and ways to navigate threats. Ellie is not only able to climb and jump over gaps, but she can use ropes to scale vertical terrain or swing over obstacles, allowing you to discover new areas, resources, and side
Those
missions.
rope physics looked a little bit off.
These more open environments also create new strategic considerations in combat, whether it's to get the jump on enemies or bypass them entirely. The Last of Us Part 2 features some of the largest environments we've ever created. Horseback riding will allow Ellie to quickly cover some of these expansive terrains.
You can tell that all of these games with the horses are probably using the same SDKs for the kind of horse hair mechanics, and by hair I just mean all the hair kind of fur stuff, right? It's probably NVIDIA like Hairworks or whatever it's called, but you can tell because it looks the same. It looks, that horsetail to me looks the same as it does in The Witcher 3. It looks the same as it does in Ghost of Tsushima, which we looked at last time. They all look very, very similar, suspiciously similar. So I think it's just one of those things that it's like, okay, now we enable NVIDIA Hairworks and we just say this is a horsetail, this is the amount of strands it has, it's in this mode, done. You know, it's almost like a template. That's what it feels like to me, to
Some
be
streets
honest.
are so flooded that a boat is required to navigate them.
Nothing wrong with that, but you know. NVIDIA GameWorks does provide a whole like selection of different rendering techniques that anyone can just take and just implement in their game, as long as, you know, they follow the license and all that stuff. So it's pretty common to see stuff like this in the games industry for sure.
However, the world of The Last of Us is as lush and inviting as it is deadly. As Ellie uncovers the path to finding those who have wronged her, she must face the many threats of this unknown city. In the wake of the pandemic and the fall of the quarantine zone, Seattle has become a war zone, where two warring factions find themselves in an ongoing conflict for territory and resources. One of these groups is the Washington Liberation Front, otherwise known as the WLF. The WLF are a militia group that began as resistance to the military occupation of Seattle, and eventually wrestled control of the city from them. They are highly trained, organized, and well-equipped with weapons they stole from the army. They occupy much of the city, imprisoning or killing trespassers on sight.
The grass, I like the way the grass looks, especially because, you know, she looks like she's moving like this these tall grass blades out of the way as she's moving through the thing. That's cool to see. I did notice something. This is a little bit of a finicky thing to notice, but if you look at that tree swaying in the background, it looks like it's just a quad that's rotating like that. Like it doesn't. It's just the whole tree is tilting back and forth. There's no little detail. And again, that's one of those things that I think that, you know, I'm beginning to see a lot of in this kind of generation, where a lot of the budget is spent, budget in terms of like the frame time budget is spent on like the very much foreground elements, and in the background, it really drops off quickly from like, you know, having a lot of detail in the foreground, although this I wouldn't say is the most detailed thing in the world, but maybe a bad example. But that kind of drop off is really quite steep. It's interesting.
Highly trained, organized, and well-equipped with weapons they stole from the army. They occupy much of the city, imprisoning or killing trespassers on sight.
Hey, we got another trespasser. A girl. Did you see her?
On the other side of this bloody conflict is a group of religious zealots called the Seraphites.
Great lighting,
or
great shot.
Scars, defined by the self-inflicted
Particles
deep
are good.
cuts that they bear across their
The wet
faces.
clothes look pretty good as well.
Like the WLF, they're deeply tribalistic and territorial. They're known for being stealthy, using overgrowth as cover, and they use more silent weapons like bows and arrows.
Clip her wings.
But beyond this conflict among survivors, the threat that originally brought the world to its knees is very much present. Every human is in danger of falling victim to the infected.
Damn. That's rough.
They are the recently infected runners, who are more numerous and aggressive in this game. The blind but extremely deadly clickers, and the stalkers, who sneak and hide until they're ready to attack, surprising their victims with extreme agility and brutal violence. The Last of Us Part 2 introduces new stages of infected, such as the Shamblers. Large, heavily armored enemies that are covered in pustule. Upon getting close to you, they expel a corrosive spore
that's
cloud
gross.
that burns its victims. But our most terrifying and lethal new forms of infected will have to wait until you play the game for yourselves. Overcoming these threats will require careful consideration of how you approach every combat encounter and how you leverage Ellie's unique skills, equipment, and the environment to your advantage. The WLF patrol the streets of Seattle with guard dogs, which are capable of detecting and following you, even while in cover. They can pick up your scent and alert their handlers to your presence. Listen mode will reveal your scent trail, so keep moving and cause distractions to avoid detection. 25 years after the pandemic began, the world is completely overgrown. Use tall grass to hide from enemies and go prone to stay out of sight. However, this form of analog stealth means you're never fully hidden. If enemies get close enough, they can discover you, even in grass. When Ellie is overwhelmed,
Who would have thought?
running away is a viable option. You can also break glass or crawl through tight spaces to find new paths or areas to evade or take on your enemies.
Yeah, having the world a little bit more interactive in the sense that like, oh, there's a building there, you know, why not be able to go inside it is good. And I would expect something like this from this gen, especially with more or less a kind of a game that seems to make you want to play it your way, right? So if you're more of a sneaky person, or if you're more of like, oh no, you know, let's maybe run away somewhere and hide if it becomes a little bit too overwhelming. You know, games in the past would always have all these buildings, but they'd be like the glass would be completely opaque, and you know, there's nothing inside the building, it's just the outside. So it's good that, you know, like games these days are kind of expected to more or less make things more, you know, if there's a building there, man, well, you better be able to get inside it, especially if it's kind of like an open world-ish game. So yeah, I mean, I would expect that, but it's always good to
In
see.
any given combat situation,
It makes
you can
this stuff
flee
a
an
lot more fun.
encounter and re-establish stealth to regain the advantage. If you absolutely have to fight your way out,
It's always fun in a game when you're literally like find yourself cornered or surrounded, or you just don't know where to run. You have to run away, and then you see a building, and then you can just run into it. And you've never been there before, and you probably wouldn't have gone inside unless you found yourself in this situation.
there are a variety of tools
It's
at
good.
your disposal.
Makes it
Ellie's
feel a lot more
agile
immersive.
than most of her enemies. She can sprint and quickly dodge incoming attacks. Learning how opponents attack with different weapons and mastering the timing of your dodges will prevent you from taking damage and create opportunities to counterattack. You can use throwable items or well-placed shots to stun enemies before dealing a killing blow.
Yeah, like those items, for example, I wonder if they're part of the environment. You can just pick up like a brick that you see and just throw that at an enemy, because that would be good. And I
Or
think that's what they were
using them
mentioning.
as a shield to protect yourself or buy some time to figure out your next move.
Yeah, interactive environments. That's what you want.
Ellie isn't always alone on her journey.
Mash
Allies will take
square.
part in helping you navigate the environments, spot enemies, and meaningfully help you in combat encounters.
Yeah, really nice animations.
Between the human survivors and the roaming infected, there will be times where multiple threats are present, creating new strategic considerations and opportunities.
That's a great shot.
You can choose whether to attack these opponents separately and directly, or find ways to pit them against each other.
Got all like the debris, or like just the particles flying
Flee if they
around.
fight, or wait until their numbers
I don't know
have
if they're
thinned out
necessarily
and
particles,
engage with
but
whomever's left.
the ambience is really nice with these scenes, for sure.
Our goal is to create unparalleled tension, coupled with deep systems that give you greater control and influence over your journey. As you play, you'll be able to invest in a broad collection of crafting items, weapon, and player upgrades through training manuals scattered throughout the environment and scavenging for ingredients. These skills and upgrade manuals cater to a variety of playstyles, and the choices you make will create your own distinct experience. We also wanted to
I
extend
feel like
that
the UI could have maybe been integrated a little bit more into the game itself, kind of like what we saw in Ghost of Tsushima, how the UI was more or less part of the actual game world instead of just being a panel that shows up. That probably would have
agency and personalization
improved
to your
this
weapons
game.
through our new workbench system. Scavenge for parts to modify and improve your weapon's performance and attributes, all of which are visualized in the
You know, like she pulled a scope out of nowhere. Instead of maybe that being a thing, maybe she would lay everything out in her backpack, and then you could actually physically see the stuff. And if you zoomed into it, it would be like, oh, it's a 6x scope or whatever. Something like
part
that,
of
something a
your
bit more immersive. I definitely like stuff like that. All right, and we are going to leave it off here. We're about 13 minutes in. I don't think this is going to be a 3-part thing, probably more of a 2-part thing, but I hope you enjoyed this little look, this first look at Last of Us Part 2, well, first look from me. I know that the game's like full on out now, and that it's been in, you know, these trailers have existed for quite some time. Let me know what you thought of this game. Let me know what stands out to me, because I have to say that the thing that impresses me the most from what I've seen so far is definitely the animation and the overall quality of the cinematics and like the voice acting and the the detail of the actual humans, the detail of the characters. I think they did a really good job at that, and to me that's a huge thing for immersion. If you're trying to connect with your audience, then you need to make something. You need to make your characters as relatable and as kind of I don't know how to phrase this, like connectable as possible. Like the thing is though, it's very difficult to predict what kind of characters people are going to connect with. I mean, you could make a little ball, and maybe the ball is very sad and has a family that he's trying to get back to, and even though he's not even a human, people can really like sympathize with that ball and connect to that ball. So I'm not saying that necessarily you need something super realistic to connect with, but the way that they've done this, I think really it matches the quality standard of like a movie or a TV show or something like that, like film and television essentially, where you would want to kind of, the same way that you wouldn't connect as much with characters who are played by actors that might not necessarily be acting very well for whatever reason. If there's that kind of dry acting, it's harder for you to connect with them. I think it's that goes to show here that it's kind of the opposite, right? This feels more like a cinematic, and the way that the characters are acting and the detail in them and the animation quality makes it feel a lot more real. And I think that that's one of the hardest things in a video game to hit, especially if you're going for a more realistic aesthetic like they are, but they did an absolutely great job. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit the like button, and don't forget to subscribe. Part 2, we'll have a look at this next time, and I will see you next time. Next time. Goodbye.